There is something happening in your energy field right now that most people never get told about. Not a warning in the way you might fear, not a punishment, not a signal that something has gone wrong. It is the opposite of that. What is moving through your field in this season? What is pressing against the edges of your aura with a kind of quiet, insistent intensity? Is the signature of a field that has been working too hard for too long in the wrong direction. And the message encoded in that pressure is not more. It is not push. It is not fight harder or prove yourself or keep going until you collapse. The message your field is carrying right now, the one that has been trying to reach you through exhaustion and through that hollow feeling you get at the end of a full day, through the strange grief that visits you when nothing is technically wrong, is this: rest is not the absence of your purpose. Rest is where your purpose is rebuilt. You are going to hear something today that you have probably been told before, but never quite like this. Never with the actual mechanics behind it. Never with the real science of what happens to your electromagnetic field when you stop. When you genuinely, consciously, completely stop. Because stopping, real stopping, is not collapse. It is not defeat. It is not laziness dressed in spiritual language. Real rest, the kind we are going to talk about today, is one of the most precise and powerful acts of field maintenance that exists. And if you are someone who has been chosen, if you are someone who carries something, if you are someone whose light has been burning at a frequency that others around you can feel even when they cannot name it, then the fact that you are here watching this in this particular week is not coincidence. Your field drew this to you, and your field is asking you to listen. Let me start with something specific, something measurable, because before we go anywhere near the spiritual architecture of what rest does to a person who carries a high-frequency purpose, I want to ground you in what is actually happening in your body right now, in your electromagnetic field, in the literal, measurable, scientifically documented energy signature that you are broadcasting at this moment. If this is landing for you, here is something I want to share with you about what sits beneath everything we are touching on here. Have you spent years trying to feel lit up again? Visualizations, affirmations, vibration work, and the light still won't hold? Every one of those methods is telling you to push harder, do more, add another technique. It's not working, because the issue isn't that you don't have enough light. 6 specific patterns are sitting on top of it. They're called the frequencies of forgetting. The remembering field, a quantum guide to returning to the light. You forgot you were carrying walks through all 5 parts of getting those patterns off you. Every tool you used tried to add more light. This one lifts what's been sitting on the light you already carry. The longer you wait, the harder they get to clear. So go open it tonight. The link is in the pinned comment below. Now let us return to the mechanics of what is actually happening in your field right now. The HeartMath Institute, which has been studying the human heart's electromagnetic field for over 30 years, has documented something that most people never learn in school, never hear from a doctor, and never encounter in the ordinary conversations of daily life. Your heart generates an electromagnetic field that extends measurably several feet in every direction beyond the surface of your skin. Not metaphorically, not spiritually, at least not only spiritually, measurably. With instruments, with repeatable results, the heart's electromagnetic field is approximately 5,000 times stronger in magnetic amplitude than the field generated by the brain. 5,000 times. And it broadcasts outward from your body in a torus shape, a donut-shaped field that wraps around you and extends into the space you occupy and the space you are about to enter. This field carries information. That is the part that changes everything once you understand it. It is not just energy in a generic sense. It is patterned energy. It carries the coherence or incoherence of your nervous system. It carries the rhythmic signature of your heart rate variability, which is the precise measure of how ordered or disordered your heart rhythm is at any given moment. When your heart rate variability is high and rhythmically coherent, meaning when the intervals between your heartbeats form a smooth, wave-like pattern rather than a jagged, erratic one, your field broadcasts what researchers call a coherent signal. And a coherent signal has measurable effects on the nervous systems of people around you. It has measurable effects on your own cognitive function, your immune response, your hormonal balance, your ability to perceive clearly and make decisions that align with what you actually want. Now here is what exhaustion does to that field. Here is what happens when you have been running on depletion, when you have been giving from a place that has not been replenished, when you have been carrying weight that was never meant to be carried alone, when you have been operating on the kind of tired that sleep alone does not fix. Your heart rate variability drops. The smooth, coherent wave pattern fractures into something jagged and irregular. Your field, instead of broadcasting a clear, high-amplitude coherent signal, begins broadcasting a fragmented one. And a fragmented field does something that most people never realize is happening. It still reaches out. It still extends into the room, into the space, into the quantum field around you. But what it carries is static. What it broadcasts is the frequency of a system under unsustainable strain. And reality, which is constantly reading your field and assembling itself around the signal it receives, begins to reflect that strain back to you. This is not punishment. This is physics. This is resonance. Like attracts like, not as a motivational slogan, but as a fundamental property of wave interference. When your field is broadcasting a fragmented, low coherence signal, it resonates with and therefore draws toward you more of what is already fragmenting it. More demand, more urgency, more situations that require you to give what you do not currently have. The field is not doing this to hurt you. It is doing what fields do. It is matching. And the only way to change what it matches is to change the signal. Rest is how you change the signal. But not just any rest. Not the rest of collapsing in front of something that keeps your nervous system in a low hum of stimulation. Not the rest of scrolling until your eyes close. Not the rest of sleeping 6 hours while your mind rehearses tomorrow's problems. The rest that changes your field. The rest that actually shifts your electromagnetic broadcast from fragmented to coherent is specific. It is intentional. It is something that the people who carry high-frequency purpose have almost always had to learn the hard way, because the world they live in never taught them that rest is part of the work. The world taught them that rest is the reward at the end of the work. And that is one of the most expensive misunderstandings a chosen person can carry. There is something else worth understanding about what happens in the body during this kind of depletion. Something that makes the field fragmentation even more concrete. When the nervous system is locked in a chronic, low-grade state of emergency, the body's production of cortisol, the primary stress hormone, becomes dysregulated. Not just elevated, but dysregulated. The normal cortisol curve, which should peak in the early morning to support wakefulness and then taper through the day, begins to flatten or invert. You wake already tired. You feel a second wind late at night when your body should be preparing for sleep. The circadian rhythm of your own chemistry has been disrupted by the sustained demand your field has been placed under. And here is why this matters for the electromagnetic broadcast you are generating. Cortisol dysregulation directly suppresses the production of DHEA, which is the hormone most closely associated with vitality, resilience, and what researchers call the anabolic state of the body, the state of building and restoring rather than consuming and depleting. HeartMath research has found that coherence states, the same states generated by the heart-focused breathing we will do together, measurably shift the cortisol to DHEA ratio in the direction of restoration. The body does not just feel better in a coherent state, it is chemically rebuilding itself. The field coherence and the biological restoration are not separate processes happening in parallel. They are the same process, expressed simultaneously at the electromagnetic level and the biochemical level. When you rest in the way I am describing, you are not just changing how you feel. You are changing the chemistry of your own body in a direction that supports the generation and maintenance of a coherent, high-amplitude field. If this is landing for you, if you feel your field recognizing what is being described here, take a moment to like this video and subscribe so this work keeps finding you when your field needs it most. Let me tell you about a woman named Miriam. Miriam was the kind of person who had been carrying something since she was young. You would have known it if you met her. There was a quality to her presence that people could not quite articulate, something warm and certain and alive. People sought her out, not just for help, though she gave that freely, sometimes too freely. They sought her out because being near her made them feel more like themselves. Her field, though she did not have that language, was operating at a frequency that resonated with the best of what was in the people around her. She was, in the language of the quantum field, a coherence amplifier. Her signal made other signals cleaner. But Miriam had learned somewhere early in her life that her light was for other people, that her energy was a resource to be distributed, that the right use of her gift was constant availability, constant giving, constant presence for whoever needed it. She had learned through years of being praised for her selflessness and quietly shamed for her needs, that the version of herself that rested was the version that was failing, that the version of herself that said, "No, I need to stop. I need to be still. I need to receive instead of give," was the version that was being selfish. And so she ran. She ran on the fumes of her own light for years. She gave from a place that had not been filled. She broadcast and broadcast and broadcast without ever turning inward to let the source replenish. And then one day, she noticed something. She was in a room full of people who loved her and needed her, and she felt nothing. Not pain, not exhaustion in the way she had felt it before. Nothing. A kind of quiet, terrifying blankness where her warmth used to live. The light was not dimmed. It was not flickering. It was simply, for the first time she could remember, not there. She sat with that blankness for a long time. And in the sitting, something happened. Something small and enormous at the same time. She felt, underneath the blankness, something she had not felt in years. A tiny, persistent warmth. Not a flame, not even a spark, more like the memory of heat in a stone that has been sitting in the sun. The source was still there. It had not gone. It had gone quiet because it had been given no space to speak. What Miriam discovered in that stillness was not a new gift. It was the original one, waiting. It had been there the whole time, patient and unhurried, waiting for her to stop long enough to receive from it, rather than draw from it. And when she finally stopped, when she finally rested in the real sense, the warmth began to return, slowly at first, then with a steadiness and a depth that she had never felt even in her most energized seasons of giving. Because this time, she was not running on the surface energy of her field. She was running on the source. There is something specific about what happened in Miriam's body during those first days of genuine stillness that is worth understanding at the level of the field. When she stopped, when she finally let the stillness be as large as it wanted to be, her nervous system began a process that physiologists call parasympathetic rebound. The parasympathetic branch of the autonomic nervous system, the branch responsible for restoration, digestion, cellular repair, and what is sometimes called the rest and digest response, had been suppressed for so long under the weight of chronic sympathetic activation that when it was finally given permission to engage, it did so with an intensity that surprised her. She slept deeply for the first time in years. She cried without knowing why, which was not breakdown, but release. The nervous system discharging accumulated stress hormones through the only mechanism available to it. She felt, in the first week, worse before she felt better. Heavier, more emotional, more raw. This is not what most people expect from rest. And it is why many high-frequency people stop resting before the restoration actually begins. They mistake the discharge for deterioration. They interpret the rawness as evidence that something is wrong, rather than as evidence that the field is finally safe enough to release what it has been holding. Miriam stayed with it. She let the discharge happen. She did not manage it or analyze it or perform her way through it. She let the parasympathetic rebound complete itself. And on the other side of it, the warmth returned, not as a flicker, but as a steady, deep, sourceful heat that she had not felt since before the years of running. There is a specific kind of exhaustion that visits people who carry a high-frequency purpose. It is different from the tiredness that comes from physical labor or from a demanding schedule. Those kinds of tired can be addressed with sleep, with vacation, with a change of pace. The exhaustion I am describing is deeper. It is the exhaustion of a field that has been broadcasting on a frequency it cannot sustain indefinitely without replenishment. It is the exhaustion of a coherent signal that has been asked to maintain its coherence without ever being returned to the source that generates it. And it has specific signatures that you might recognize. One signature is the feeling of going through the motions of things that used to move you. You do the things. You show up. You give. But there is a hollowness to it, a mechanical quality, as though the action is happening, but the energy behind the action, the field-level reality of it, has gone somewhere else. This is not spiritual failure. This is your field telling you that the broadcast has dropped below the threshold of genuine coherence. You are transmitting, but the signal is thin. Another signature is a specific kind of emotional flatness that coexists with surface-level busyness. You are doing a great deal. Your calendar is full. Your responsibilities are real and heavy. But underneath all of that motion, there is a stillness that does not feel peaceful. It feels numb. This is the field protecting itself. When the coherent signal cannot be maintained, the nervous system begins to conserve. It narrows the bandwidth. It shuts down the channels that require the most energy to keep open, and the channels that require the most energy are the ones connected to your deepest purpose, your highest frequency, your most luminous broadcast. They go quiet first. A third signature is the strange grief I mentioned at the beginning, the grief that visits you when nothing is technically wrong, when your life looks fine from the outside, when you have things to be grateful for, when you know intellectually that you are blessed And yet there is this ache, this sense of something missing that you cannot name. This is not ingratitude. This is your field, mourning the distance between where it is operating and where it is capable of operating. It is the frequency signature of a coherent field that has been asked to run at a lower coherence for too long. It knows what it is capable of, and the gap between that knowing and the current reality is felt as grief. There is a fourth signature that does not get named as often as the others, and it is one of the most telling. It is the experience of being surrounded by people and still feeling profoundly alone. Not lonely in the ordinary sense, alone at the level of the field. It is the experience of being in a room full of people who know your name and your history and your face, and feeling that none of them are in contact with the real you. The you beneath the role. The you beneath the performance. The you that exists at the ground state rather than at the surface. This signature appears when the field has been broadcasting a managed version of itself for so long that even the people closest to you are only in contact with the broadcast, not the source. They are receiving the signal, but not the sender, and the ache of that, the specific loneliness of being known only by your output and not by your frequency, is one of the most accurate indicators that a deep, ground state restoration is needed. Not a vacation, not a weekend away. A genuine return to the source of yourself. The kind of rest that brings you back into contact with your own original frequency, so that what you broadcast is not a managed performance, but an actual transmission. Has your field ever shifted in a way you could actually feel? A moment when your energy changed, when people around you responded differently, when you walked into a room and something in the atmosphere moved? I would love to hear about it in the comments. Your experience is part of this field too. If you recognize any of these signatures, then what I am about to tell you is specifically for you. And I want you to hear it not as a gentle suggestion, but as a precise, field-level instruction. Because what I am describing is not a spiritual metaphor. It is the actual mechanics of what happens to a high-frequency field when it is denied the specific kind of rest that restores coherence. And the instruction is this: the rest you need right now is not earned. It is not a reward for finishing. It is not something you get to have when the list is done. It is a field requirement. It is as necessary to your purpose as the purpose itself. And the week you are in right now, the season your field has entered, is one in which the cost of not resting is higher than it has been before. Because the work that is coming, the frequency you are being prepared to carry, the level of coherence that the next chapter of your purpose requires, cannot be generated from a depleted field. It can only be generated from a restored one. Now let me go deeper into the mechanics of what actually happens when you rest in the way I am describing. Heart rate variability, which I mentioned earlier, is one of the most sensitive and accurate measures of nervous system health that exists. It is not a fixed number. It changes moment to moment, and it is exquisitely responsive to your internal state. When you are under chronic stress, when you are operating from depletion, when your nervous system is locked in a low-grade state of emergency, your heart rate variability becomes what researchers call low-frequency dominant. The intervals between your heartbeats become erratic and irregular. And this irregularity is not just a health indicator. It is a field indicator. It is the signature of a broadcasting system that is operating below its coherent capacity. What restores high heart rate variability is not complicated, but it is specific. It is not simply the absence of stress, though that helps. It is the active presence of what heart math researchers call a coherence state. A coherence state is generated when your heart rhythm synchronizes with your breath in a particular way. When your emotional state shifts from the low-frequency bands of anxiety, frustration, and depletion into the higher frequency bands of appreciation, care, and what researchers call sincere, positive emotion. Not performed positivity, not forced gratitude. Sincere, positive emotion. The real thing. Even a small amount of genuine warmth, genuine appreciation, genuine tenderness towards something in your life shifts the heart rhythm pattern measurably and almost immediately. This is why the rest I am describing is not passive. It is not simply lying down and waiting. It is the active cultivation of a specific internal state that allows your field to return to coherence. It involves genuine stillness. It involves the deliberate withdrawal of attention from the demands and urgencies that have been fragmenting your signal. It involves turning the receiver inward, toward the source, toward the warmth that Miriam found underneath the blankness, and letting that warmth generate the coherent signal that your field has been trying to generate from the outside in. There is a practice I want to walk you through right now. Not at the end of this. Right now. because your field is present in this moment, and this moment is exactly when the shift can begin. I want you to take a breath, not a performance breath, not the kind of breath you take when someone tells you to breathe, and you feel slightly self-conscious about it. A real breath, the kind your body takes when it finally, genuinely lets something go. Let your shoulders drop. Let your jaw unclench. Let the space behind your eyes soften. If you are lying down, feel the full weight of your body against whatever is supporting you. If you are sitting, let the chair or the floor receive you. You do not have to hold yourself up right now. You do not have to be ready for anything. You do not have to manage anything. For this moment, for exactly this moment, nothing is required of you. Now bring your attention to your heart, not as a concept, as a location, the center of your chest, slightly to the left. And I want you to imagine, as precisely as you can, that your breath is moving in and out through that location. Slow it down slightly. Not forced, just a little slower than your ordinary breath. In through the heart center, out through the heart center. And as you do this, I want you to find something. One thing. It does not have to be large. It does not have to be profound. One small, genuine thing in your life that carries warmth for you. A face, a place, a moment, a quality of light at a particular time of day. Something that, when you bring it to mind, generates a real, felt warmth in your chest rather than a performed one. Let that warmth be there. Do not amplify it. Do not analyze it. Just let it be present while your breath continues to move through your heart center. Slow, easy, in, out. The warmth and the breath together. What you are doing right now, in this moment, is generating a coherent state. Your heart rate variability is shifting. The pattern of your heartbeat is smoothing from jagged to wave-like. Your nervous system is receiving a signal that says, the emergency is over. You are safe. You can restore. And as that signal travels from your heart through your nervous system, it reaches your electromagnetic field. And your field, which has been broadcasting a fragmented signal, begins to reorganize around a coherent one. This is not visualization. This is not wishful thinking. This is the measurable, documented, reproducible effect of a specific physiological state on a specific measurable output. And it takes according to heart math research, as little as 3 to 5 minutes of genuine coherence. Breathing to shift the heart rhythm pattern from incoherent to coherent. 3 to 5 minutes. That is the threshold. That is the minimum investment required to begin changing the signal your field is broadcasting. Stay with this for as long as you need to. And when you come back, we are going to talk about something that goes even deeper. We are going to talk about why this particular week, this particular moment, carries a specific weight for people who carry what you carry, and why the rest you are being called to is not a pause in your purpose. It is the preparation for its next level. There is a concept in quantum field theory called vacuum energy, and I want to use it carefully here because it points at something real and important. In quantum mechanics, the vacuum, the state of lowest possible energy in a quantum system, is not actually empty. It is full. It is full of what physicists call zero-point energy, the irreducible ground state energy that exists even when every other form of energy has been removed. The quantum vacuum is the most energetically dense thing that exists. It is the ground state of the universe. And from that ground state, everything that exists emerges. Every particle, every field, every structure of matter and energy arises from the quantum vacuum as a fluctuation, as a pattern, as a temporary organization of what was already in potential fully present. I am telling you this because it is the most precise description I know of what genuine rest is for a person who carries a high-frequency purpose. The deepest rest, the rest that actually restores your field, rather than simply pausing its depletion, is a return to your own ground state. It is the return to the 0 point of your own being. The place where everything you are capable of is fully present in potential, waiting to organize into expression. You do not go to rest to become empty. You go to rest to become full again with what you actually are before the world's demands have shaped you into what it needs you to be. This is the rest that most high-frequency people never reach, because most high-frequency people have been so thoroughly trained to be available, to be productive, to be in motion, that the moment they stop, the moment they approach the threshold of genuine stillness, something in them panics. The stillness feels like emptiness. The quiet feels like failure. The absence of output feels like the absence of value. And so they fill the stillness before it can do its work. They reach for the phone. They start the next task. They find a reason to be needed. And the ground state, the 0 point, the place where their field would have restored to full coherence, remains just out of reach. If you recognize this pattern in yourself, I want you to understand something about it. It is not a character flaw. It is a learned response to a specific kind of early experience. Most people who carry a high-frequency purpose learned early that their light was most welcome when it was in service to something outside themselves. They learned that their stillness made other people uncomfortable, that their quiet was interpreted as withdrawal, as coldness, as unavailability, that the version of themselves that was simply being, without producing or giving or performing their gift, was the version that received less love, less approval, less safety, and so they learned to run. They learned to keep the light moving, to keep it directed outward, to keep it in constant, useful motion, because a moving light was a safe light. A still light was a vulnerable one. But here is what that learning cost them. It cost them access to their own source. Because the source of a high-frequency field is not in its motion. It is in its stillness. The heart generates its electromagnetic field, not through effort, but through coherence. And coherence is not something you do. It is something you allow. It is the natural state of a heart that is not under siege. It is the default of a nervous system that is not in emergency. It is the ground state of a field that has been permitted to return to itself. The rest you are being called to this week is a return to yourself, not to a version of yourself that is useful or productive or impressive or needed. To yourself, the self that exists before the roles and the responsibilities and the broadcast, the self that is, in the language of the quantum field, pure potential, pure coherence, the 0 point of your own being. And I want to tell you something about what happens in that 0 point, something that the people who have found their way there will recognize immediately, and something that the people who have never reached it may find difficult to believe until they experience it themselves. When you return to your own ground state, when you genuinely rest at the level of your field, rather than simply pausing your activity, something comes to meet you there. Something that has been trying to reach you through the noise, through the busyness, through the fragmented signal of a depleted field. It has been broadcasting toward you the whole time, but your receiver was too full of static to pick it up. In the language of this channel, we would call that something the quantum field responding to the coherence of your restored signal. In the language that the title of this video speaks, we might call it something else. We might call it the voice that has been waiting for the noise to stop, the guidance that cannot reach a fragmented field, the clarity that only comes when the field has cleared enough to receive it. I am not going to tell you what to call it. That is yours. That belongs to your tradition, your framework, your personal relationship with whatever you understand the source to be. What I will tell you is that the mechanics are the same regardless of the language. A coherent field receives. A fragmented field deflects. And the specific kind of rest I am describing, the return to your own ground state, the restoration of your field to full coherence, is what makes you receivable. What makes you capable of picking up the signal that has been trying to reach you? This is the urgent message. Not urgent in the sense of emergency, urgent in the sense of timing, because there are seasons in the life of a high-frequency person when the gap between where they are operating and where they are capable of operating becomes wide enough that something has to give. And in those seasons, the field itself sends a signal. It sends it through the body, through the exhaustion that sleep does not fix, through the grief that visits when nothing is technically wrong, through the hollowness in the things that used to move you, through the strange, persistent sense that something important is waiting just out of reach. If only you could be still enough to find it. You are in one of those seasons right now. The field has been sending that signal. And the message in the signal is not that you have failed. It is not that you have fallen behind. It is not that you need to do more, be more, give more, push harder. The message is, come back. Come back to yourself. Come back to your ground state. Come back to the stillness where your coherent signal lives, because what is waiting for you there? What is ready to come through a restored and coherent field is something you cannot access from where you currently are. Rest is the portal. Stillness is the frequency. And the work that comes on the other side of this rest is the work you were actually made for. Let me tell you about a man named Elias. Elias had been running for 11 years. Not literally, though he was always in motion. He had been running on a vision, a clear, burning, specific vision of something he was meant to build, meant to carry, meant to bring into the world. And for the first several years, the running had felt right. The motion had felt aligned. The energy behind it had been clean and full and generative. He had been operating from a full field, broadcasting at high coherence, and reality had been assembling around that signal in ways that confirmed the vision. Things had come together. Doors had opened. The right people had appeared at the right moments. The field had been working. But somewhere around year 5, something had shifted. The vision was still there. The commitment was still there. But the energy behind it had changed quality. It had become effortful in a way it had not been before. The doors were still opening, but it felt like he was pushing them now rather than walking through them. The right people were still appearing, but the conversations felt heavier. The field was still working, but it was working harder for less. And Elias, who had been trained by 11 years of forward motion to interpret any slowdown as failure, did what he always did when things got harder. He pushed more. He gave more. He ran faster. By year 8, he was producing more than he ever had. More output, more impact, more visible results. And he was more depleted than he had ever been. The field signature that had once drawn things to him effortlessly was now broadcasting something different, something that required constant maintenance to keep functional. He was managing his signal rather than radiating it. And the difference between managing a signal and radiating one is the difference between a lamp that is being kept on by constant effort and a lamp that is simply plugged into its source. In year 9, Elias stopped, not by choice. His body stopped him, not dramatically, not with a crisis, with a quiet, persistent refusal to keep going at the pace he had been setting. A tiredness that was deeper than tired. A stillness that kept arriving uninvited and sitting in the middle of everything he was trying to do. He fought it for a while. He called it depression. He called it burnout. He called it failure. He tried to diagnose it and fix it and push through it. And then, one morning, he simply did not. He did not push through it. He sat with it. He let the stillness be there. He let it be as large as it wanted to be. He did not fill it. He did not manage it. He did not perform his way through it. He sat in it for a long time. And at first, it felt exactly like emptiness. Like the thing he had been afraid of his whole life. Like the absence of everything that had made him feel purposeful and valuable and alive. And then, slowly, something began to happen. The emptiness, which was not actually emptiness, but was the 0 point, the ground state, the quantum vacuum of his own being, began to fill. Not with the things he had been pouring into it from the outside, with something that came from within, a warmth, a clarity, a quality of knowing that was entirely different from the strategic intelligence he had been running on for 11 years. It was not planning. It was not vision in the way he understood vision. It was something more fundamental than that. It was the sense of his own original frequency, the signal he had been broadcasting before the world had shaped it into something useful. He stayed in that stillness for 3 weeks. 3 weeks of the most unproductive time of his 11-year run. No output, no motion, no visible progress. Just the slow, patient, profound restoration of a field that had been depleted past the point of self-repair through ordinary rest. And at the end of those 3 weeks, when he began to move again, something was different. Not in what he was doing, in how he was doing it. The motion had the quality of the early years again. The effortlessness, the sense of things assembling around him rather than being forced into place. The field was broadcasting from a restored coherence, and reality was reading it. What Elias discovered in those 3 weeks was not a new strategy. It was not a new vision. It was not a new version of himself. It was the original one, the one that had been there before the 11 years of running, the one that had generated the vision in the first place. He had not lost it. He had buried it under the weight of his own effort. And the 3 weeks of stillness had not built something new. They had revealed what had always been there. There is a specific thing that Elias noticed in the 2nd week of his stillness that is worth naming precisely, because it is something that many people who attempt this kind of deep rest encounter and misinterpret. In the 2nd week, after the initial discharge of accumulated stress had begun to settle, he found himself face to face with something he had been running from for 11 years. Not a problem, not a fear in the ordinary sense, a question. A single, quiet, persistent question that the motion had been keeping at bay. The question was not about his work, or his vision, or his strategy. It was more fundamental than any of those. The question was, who are you when you are not producing anything? And the reason he had been running from it was not that he feared the answer. It was that he had never allowed himself the stillness required to to find out. The running had been, in part, a way of never having to sit with that question long enough to let it resolve. Because a field in motion does not have to face its own ground state. It can keep broadcasting from the surface indefinitely, as long as it never stops long enough for the surface to go still and reveal what is underneath. The 3 weeks of stillness forced the question to the surface. And when Elias finally sat with it, when he finally let it be as large as it was, the answer that came back was not complicated. It was not a revelation in the dramatic sense. It was quiet and certain and deep. It was simply this warmth, this frequency, this quality of presence that has nothing to do with output. This is who I am. This is what I carry. This is the thing the work was always meant to express, not replace. This is the paradox of radiance that I want you to hold with you as we go deeper. You do not build your light. You reveal it. The light was there before the building. It was there before the effort. It was there before the vision and the work and the years of running. It is the ground state of your being, and everything that has accumulated over the years of running, every layer of effort and performance and managed signal and strategic output is not the light. It is what is covering the light. And rest, genuine rest, the return to your own ground state, is how the covering comes off. This does not mean the work was wrong. Elias's 11 years were not wasted. They were necessary. They built the structure through which his restored light would flow. But the light that would flow through that structure had to come from the source, not from the effort. And the source required stillness to reach. Now I want to go into something even more specific. Something about the particular frequency of this week, this season, and why the call to rest is landing with the urgency it is landing with right now. There are moments in the life of a high-frequency field when the quantum field, the larger field that your personal field exists within and broadcasts into, undergoes what you might call a coherence shift, a reorganization, a moment when the patterns that have been stable begin to loosen, and new patterns become possible that were not possible before. These moments are not always comfortable. They often arrive as a kind of disorientation, a sense that the things you have been relying on are less solid than they were, a feeling of being between things, of having left something behind and not yet arrived somewhere new, of being in the most precise sense, in transition. These moments are not accidents. They are not failures of your field. They are the field's way of creating space for a new level of coherence. Because coherence does not upgrade incrementally. It upgrades in leaps. And before each leap, there is a loosening, a dissolution of the previous pattern, a moment of apparent chaos that is actually the quantum field preparing to reorganize at a higher level of order. In physics, this kind of transition has a name. It is called a phase transition. Water does not gradually become ice. It reaches a threshold temperature, and then, at a specific critical point, the entire molecular structure reorganizes simultaneously. The change is not incremental. It is sudden and complete. And in the moment before the reorganization, the moment when the water is at exactly 0 degrees Celsius, the system is at its most sensitive. The slightest input, the tiniest perturbation, can determine the shape of the ice that forms, the direction of the crystals, the structure of what the system becomes on the other side of the transition. Your field, in a coherence transition, is like water at 0 degrees. It is at maximum sensitivity. The inputs it receives in this moment, the signal it is broadcasting in this moment, will have an outsized influence on the structure of what assembles on the other side. This is why the rest matters so acutely right now. Not because rest is always the most important thing, but because in a phase transition, the quality of your signal at the threshold moment determines the quality of what crystallizes around it. A coherent signal at the threshold produces a coherent structure on the other side. A fragmented signal at the threshold produces a fragmented one. You are at the threshold. The structure is forming. The signal you are broadcasting right now is the input that will shape it. If you have been feeling that loosening recently, if you have been feeling that particular disorientation of being between things, of having left something behind and not yet arrived somewhere new, then you are in a coherence transition. And the most important thing you can do in a coherence transition is not to force the new pattern into place before it is ready. It is to maintain the coherence of your own field through the transition, to hold your signal steady while the larger field reorganizes around it. And the way you hold your signal steady is not through effort. It is through rest. It is through the return to your own ground state. It is through the maintenance of your own coherence while everything outside you is in the process of becoming something new. This is what the urgency is about. Not urgency as panic, urgency as timing. The window for this particular kind of rest, for this particular kind of field restoration, is not indefinitely open. The transition is happening whether you rest or not. The reorganization is underway. The question is whether you arrive at the new level of coherence with a restored field or a depleted one. Whether you step into the next chapter of your purpose with a full signal or a fragmented one. Whether you receive what is trying to reach you through a clear field or miss it through the static of a field that has been running too long without replenishment. The chosen one in the title of this video is not a title of superiority. It is a description of function. To be chosen is to carry a specific frequency that is needed in a specific context at a specific time. It is to be the person whose coherent field amplifies the coherence of the fields around them. It is to be the presence that makes people feel more like themselves. It is to be the broadcast that carries something the quantum field needs in this particular moment. And the thing about being chosen in this sense is that it is not a permanent state of being. It is a capacity that requires maintenance. It is a frequency that requires a source. And the source requires rest. You cannot carry what you are meant to carry from a depleted field. You cannot broadcast what you are meant to broadcast from a fragmented signal. You cannot be the presence that makes people feel more like themselves when you have lost access to yourself. The rest is not separate from the mission. The rest is the mission at this particular moment. The rest is what makes everything else possible. Let me give you a second practice. This one is different from the coherence breathing we did earlier. This one is specifically designed for the kind of rest that restores the ground state. The 0-point rest. The rest that is not just the absence of activity, but the active return to your own source. Find a position that your body can hold without effort. Lying down is ideal for this practice. If you cannot lie down, seated with full support is fine. The key is that your body is not holding itself up. It is being held. Let whatever is beneath you receive your full weight. Every part of you. The heaviness in your shoulders. The tension in your jaw. The holding in your chest. The bracing in your lower back. Let the surface beneath you receive all of it. You do not have to carry any of it right now. Now bring your attention to the boundary of your body, not the skin, the field, the electromagnetic field that extends beyond your skin in every direction. You may not be able to feel it directly, but you can sense it. There is a quality of aliveness just beyond your skin, a warmth, or a tingling, or a sense of presence that is you, but is not contained by your physical form. Let your attention rest there, at the boundary, at the place where you end and the space around you begins. Now, very gently, let that boundary soften, not dissolve, soften. Let the field relax its edges slightly. Let it expand a little, the way a breath expands your chest without force. Just a natural, easy expansion of your awareness to include the space immediately around your body. Feel the field around you as something alive, something that is you, something that is breathing with you. Now, from that expanded awareness, I want you to let the field go quiet, not empty, quiet, the way a lake goes quiet when the wind stops. The surface is still there. The water is still there. But the disturbance has ceased. Let your field be like that, still on the surface, full underneath. The activity has stopped. The broadcasting has paused. The signal is resting, not off, resting. In this stillness, in this quiet, in this resting of the signal, there is something present, something that was always there but could not be heard over the broadcast. It is not loud. It does not demand. It waits with the patience of something that has been waiting a long time and has no urgency because it knows it will be found eventually. It is the frequency of your own source, your own ground state, the 0 point of your being. You do not have to do anything with it. You do not have to understand it, or name it, or translate it into a plan. Just let it be present. Let yourself be present with it. Let the field rest in the awareness of its own source. This is the rest that restores. This is the stillness that fills. This is the return that makes everything else possible. Stay here as long as you can. If your mind wanders, which it will, that is fine. Every time it wanders, bring it back to the boundary of your field, back to the softness, back to the quiet, back to the presence of your own source. Each return is not a failure. Each return is the practice. Each return is the field learning to rest. When you come back from this practice, you will notice something. It may be subtle. It may be a slight lifting of the heaviness, a marginal increase in the quality of your breath, a small but real sense of warmth where there was numbness before. This is your field beginning to restore. This is the coherence beginning to return. It will not be complete from one practice. The restoration takes time, especially if the depletion has been long. But the direction has changed. The field has received the signal that it is safe to restore. And that signal, once received, begins to work. Now let me go into something that I think is one of the most important and least talked about aspects of this entire subject. The specific relationship between rest and what you are capable of receiving. In quantum mechanics, there is a phenomenon called quantum entanglement, in which two particles that have interacted become correlated in such a way that the state of one instantly affects the state of the other, regardless of the distance between them. The mechanism behind this is not fully understood, but the phenomenon itself is thoroughly documented and experimentally verified. What it tells us about the nature of the quantum field is that connection is not dependent on proximity. That information can be shared between systems that are not in physical contact. That the field is fundamentally relational in a way that transcends the ordinary rules of space and time. I am telling you this because I want you to understand something about the nature of what you can receive when your field is in a coherent state. The quantum field around you is not neutral. It is not a blank medium through which your signal travels without interaction. It is a living, responsive, relational field that is constantly in communication with every other field within it. And the quality of that communication, what gets through and what does not, what reaches you and what is deflected, is determined by the coherence of your own signal. A coherent field is, in the language of quantum mechanics, a more ordered system. And ordered systems interact more efficiently with other ordered systems. They resonate more cleanly. They exchange information more completely. A coherent field can receive a signal that a fragmented field cannot even detect. Not because the signal is not there, but because the receiver is not capable of picking it up through the noise of its own incoherence. There is a specific way to understand this in terms of what physicists call signal-to-noise ratio. In any receiving system, the ability to detect an incoming signal depends not just on the strength of the signal, but on the ratio between that signal and the background noise in the receiver. A radio telescope pointed at a distant galaxy can detect signals of extraordinary faintness, not because those signals are loud, but because the telescope has been engineered to minimize its own internal noise, to the point where even a whisper from billions of light years away can be resolved into a clear pattern. Your field works the same way. The guidance, the clarity, the knowing that is trying to reach you is not necessarily a loud signal. It may be precise and clear, but quiet, the way the most important truths often are. What determines whether you can receive it is not the volume of the transmission. It is the noise floor of your receiver. A depleted, fragmented field has a high noise floor. The internal static of chronic stress, unresolved urgency, and sustained depletion creates so much background interference that even a clear signal cannot be resolved against it. Rest lowers the noise floor. Coherence lowers the noise floor. The ground state restoration I have been describing is, in precise technical terms, the process of reducing your receiver's internal noise to the point where the signals that have always been present can finally be detected. This is the mechanics behind the experience that many high-frequency people describe as receiving guidance. The sense of knowing something without knowing how you know it. The clarity that arrives in stillness that was unavailable in motion. The solution that appears after you have stopped trying to find it. These are not mystical anomalies. They are the predictable result of a coherent field receiving information that was always available but could not be detected through the incoherence of a depleted, fragmented signal. The guidance that has been trying to reach you. The clarity about the next step. The knowing about what is actually true in a situation that has been confusing you. The sense of direction that has been obscured by the noise of urgency and demand. These things are present in the field around you right now. They have been present. They will continue to be present, but they can only be received by a field that is coherent enough to detect them. And the path to that coherence, as we have been exploring throughout this entire transmission, is rest. The specific, intentional, ground state rest that restores your field to its natural coherence. This is the warning, not a warning of danger, a warning of timing, a warning that says the things that are trying to reach you cannot wait indefinitely. The window in which this particular guidance, this particular clarity, this particular knowing is available to you is not permanently open. The quantum field is in motion. The patterns are shifting. The reorganization is underway. And the information that is available in this specific moment of transition, the information that is specifically calibrated to where you are and what you are being prepared for, requires a coherent receiver to get through. Rest now, not because you are tired, though you are. Not because you deserve it, though you do. Rest now, because the most important thing that is trying to reach you can only come through a still field. Rest now, because the next level of your purpose requires a full signal to generate. Rest now, because the ground state of your being, the 0 point, the source of everything you are capable of, is waiting for you to come back to it. And it has been waiting with the patience of something that knows, with complete certainty, that you will find your way back. I want to address something directly that some of you may be feeling as you listen to this. A resistance. A voice that says, I cannot rest right now. There is too much. The people who need me cannot wait. The work that is mine to do will not do itself. The timing is wrong. Later, after this is done, after this season passes, after things calm down, I hear that voice, and I want to tell you something about it. That voice is not your wisdom. That voice is not your purpose speaking. That voice is the learned pattern of a field that has been trained to believe that its value is in its motion, that its light is only welcome when it is in service, that stillness is a luxury it has not yet earned. And that voice is costing you more than you know. Because here is what is actually true. The people who need you need your coherent field, not your depleted one. They need the presence that makes them feel more like themselves, not the managed performance of a field that is running on fumes. The work that is yours to do requires your full signal to do it at the level it is meant to be done. A fragmented broadcast does not serve the people around you. It depletes them along with you. The thing you are protecting by not resting is not your purpose. It is the appearance of your purpose, the motion of it, the output of it, without the source of it. And the source requires rest. There is something else that voice is doing that is worth naming precisely. It is conflating urgency with importance. It is treating the things that feel most pressing as though they are the things that matter most. But urgency and importance are not the same frequency. The most urgent things in a depleted field are often the things that the fragmented signal has been attracting. The demand and the emergency and the constant need that a low coherence broadcast draws toward itself. The most important things, the things that are actually aligned with your purpose, the things that your restored field would naturally generate and attract are often quiet. They do not shout. They do not manufacture urgency. They wait in the stillness for a coherent receiver to find them. The voice that says there is no time to rest is the voice of the fragmented signal perpetuating itself. It is the static insisting that it is the signal, and the only way to hear the actual signal beneath it is to let the static go quiet long enough to listen. There is a beautiful and precise thing that happens when a high-frequency person rests in the way I have been describing. Their field, as it restores to coherence, begins to affect the fields around them. Not through action, not through doing anything, simply through being coherent, through broadcasting the signal of a restored, full amplitude field. The people in their environment begin to feel it. The quality of the space around them shifts. The interactions that were heavy become lighter. The problems that seemed intractable begin to resolve. Not because the resting person is doing anything to address them, because a coherent field in proximity to other fields elevates those fields toward coherence. It is electromagnetic induction. It is resonance. It is the measurable, documented, reproducible effect of a high coherence field on the fields around it. This is the deepest truth about why rest serves others. Not because it makes you more productive when you return to action, though it does. Not because it prevents the burnout that would leave the people who need you without you, though it does that too. But because the rest itself, the coherence that returns through the rest, is already a form of service. The restored field radiates, and what it radiates is what the people around you need most. Not your output, your coherence, not your effort, your light. Let me give you one more layer of this, one more depth to take with you. There is a specific quality of knowing that only comes through deep rest. Not intellectual knowing, not strategic clarity, not the kind of insight that comes from thinking hard about a problem. Something older than that. Something that the nervous system, when it has been fully released from the state of emergency, becomes capable of accessing. Researchers sometimes call it interoception, the body's ability to sense its own internal state with precision and accuracy. But it is more than that. When the nervous system is truly at rest, when the field is fully coherent, when the ground state has been reached, there is a quality of perception that becomes available. A knowing that is not thought. A clarity that is not analysis. A certainty that is not confidence but is deeper than confidence. It is the knowing that comes from being fully present in your own field, fully connected to your own source, fully in contact with the frequency that is yours and yours alone. The neuroscience behind this is precise enough to be worth stating. The prefrontal cortex, the region of the brain most associated with planning, decision-making, and what researchers call executive function, operates at its highest capacity. Not during states of high arousal and urgency, but during states of calm, focused alertness. The kind of calm that is generated by a coherent heart signal. HeartMath research has documented a specific neural pathway through which the heart's coherent signal travels to the brain, influencing the firing patterns of the prefrontal cortex directly. When the heart is in a coherent state, the prefrontal cortex receives a signal that supports what researchers call cortical facilitation, an increase in the clarity, accuracy, and depth of perception and cognition. When the heart is in an incoherent state, the same pathway carries a signal that produces cortical inhibition, a measurable reduction in perceptual clarity and cognitive function. This means that the knowing you are seeking, the clarity you have been trying to think your way toward, the guidance you have been efforting to find, is literally more available to your brain when your heart is coherent. The organ of knowing is not separate from the organ of feeling. They are in continuous, bidirectional communication, and the quality of that communication is determined by the coherence of your heart's electromagnetic signal, which is determined by the quality of your rest. This knowing is what the guidance comes through. This is the channel through which the urgent message arrives, not through the noise, not through the motion, not through the managed output of a depleted field, through the stillness, through the coherence, through the quiet that is not empty, but is full with the presence of your own source, and the message that comes through that channel, the message that is available to you when your field has restored to the coherence that makes it receivable, is not complicated. It is not a strategy or a plan or a list of actions. It is simpler than that and more powerful than that. It is the sense of your own original frequency, the knowing of what you are actually here to do, stripped of the layers of effort and performance and managed output. The clarity of your own purpose, seen from the ground state rather than from the middle of the running. That clarity is what this rest is preparing you for. That knowing is what the restored field will receive. That is the urgent message that has been trying to reach you. Not through warning, through invitation, through the persistent, patient, loving signal that says, come back. Come back to yourself. Come back to your ground state. Come back to the stillness where your coherent signal lives. Because what is waiting for you there is everything you have been running toward. And you cannot reach it by running. You can only reach it by stopping. So stop this week in whatever way is available to you, in whatever form your life permits. Find the stillness. Find the ground state. Find the 0 point of your own being. Let the field restore. Let the coherence return. Let the signal clear. Let the warmth that Miriam found underneath the blankness. Let the source that Elias found in his 3 weeks of stillness. Let the original frequency that was there before the running. Let it come back. There is a third practice I want to give you before we close. This one is not for the moment of rest itself. It is for the transition, for the gap between the motion and the stillness, for the threshold moment when the part of you that has been trained to run is being asked to stop. Because that threshold is where most people lose the practice before it begins. The resistance arrives precisely at the moment of stopping, not before. You can decide to rest while you are still in motion and feel entirely resolved about it. And then, the moment you actually stop, the moment the motion ceases and the stillness begins to arrive, something in you reaches for something to fill it with. This practice is for that moment. When you feel the reaching begin, when you feel the hand moving toward the phone, or the mind beginning to rehearse the list, or the body beginning to find a reason to stand up and do something, I want you to do one thing before you act on it. I want you to name what you are feeling in your body at that exact moment, not what you are thinking, what you are feeling. In the body, a tightness somewhere, a restlessness in the legs, a hollow feeling in the chest, a buzzing in the hands, something physical. Name it as precisely as you can, not with a story about why it is there, just the physical sensation itself. Tight chest, restless legs, hollow center, buzzing hands. Name it once, out loud if you can, and then return your attention to the breath, to the heart center, to the boundary of your field, not to fix the sensation, not to make it go away, just to be present with it rather than acting on it. What you are doing in that moment is interrupting the automaticity of the pattern of filling the stillness before it can do its work. You are inserting a moment of conscious presence between the stimulus and the response. And in that moment, the field has a chance to do what it knows how to do: to rest, to restore, to return to the ground state that is its natural home. You are a radiating field of quantum energy. Your heart is generating an electromagnetic signal right now that extends several feet in every direction beyond your body. That signal is broadcasting who you actually are to the quantum field at every moment. And the quantum field is assembling reality around that signal. What you radiate, reality assembles around. This is not metaphor. This is the measurable, documented, reproducible physics of your own field. And right now, the most powerful thing you can radiate is coherence. The coherence of a field that has returned to its source. The coherence of a heart that has been permitted to restore. The coherence of a signal that is not managed or maintained or performed, but is simply, genuinely, fully itself, broadcasting from the ground state, radiating from the 0 point, shining from the source. That is the radiance that changes rooms. That is the presence that makes people feel more like themselves. That is the broadcast that the quantum field reads and responds to by assembling around it the reality that matches its frequency. And that frequency, at its fullest, at its most coherent, at its most restored, is the frequency of your original purpose. The thing you were here to carry before the world taught you to run. If there is someone in your life whose light has been dimming, whose field you can feel running on fumes, consider returning to this transmission in a quiet moment, in the stillness of a morning before the day begins, or in the softness before sleep, when the field is most open and receptive, and sharing it with them. When you pass this to someone whose awareness needs awakening, something happens between your fields. Their coherence begins to stir. Yours deepens in resonance, and the collective luminosity grows. That is not a small thing. That is the quantum field responding to two restored signals finding each other. Rest now, chosen one. Not because you have earned it, not because the work is done, not because you have nothing left to give. Rest now, because the work that is coming, the work that is actually yours, the work that your restored field will make possible, cannot be done from where you currently are. Rest now, because the guidance that is trying to reach you can only come through a still field. Rest now, because the source of everything you are capable of is waiting for you in the stillness. And it has been waiting with complete certainty that you would find your way back. Your field knows how to restore. Your heart knows how to return to coherence. Your nervous system knows how to release the state of emergency and return to the ground state. These are not things you have to learn. They are things you have to allow. The knowing is already there. The capacity is already there. The source is already there. What is required of you now is not effort. It is permission. Permission to stop. Permission to be still. Permission to let the field do what the field knows how to do when it is given the space to do it. Give yourself that permission. This week, in this season, in this precise moment of transition, when the quantum field is reorganizing and the new patterns are becoming possible, and the guidance that will show you the way through is waiting just on the other side of your own coherence. Stop. Breathe. Let the boundary of your field soften. Let the signal rest. Let the warmth return from the source. Let the 0 point fill with what it has always contained. Let the original frequency come back. You have been glowing this whole time, even through the depletion, even through the running, even through the years of broadcasting from a place that needed replenishing. The light was never off. It was covered. And the rest is how the covering comes off. Come back to your light. It has been waiting for you. And when you arrive, when you return to the ground state of your own being, when the coherence is restored, and the signal is clear, and the field is broadcasting from the source rather than from the surface, you will know something with a certainty that no amount of effort could have given you. You will know what you are here to do. You will know the next step. You will know the shape of the work that is actually yours, and you will be ready to carry it, not from depletion, from fullness, not from effort, from source, not from the running, from the stillness that made the running meaningful. Your field is active. Your source is present. Your light is real. And the rest you take this week is not a pause in your purpose. It is the preparation for its next and fullest expression. Rest now. The field will do the rest.